And as a marketeer, that is gold dust for me.
Are we talking brand police?
A bit, maybe. Yes,
brand police is fine because we can say a logo is a brand code, but that's only one part of it.
I might be stealing a little bit from Disney.
We won't
That's
tell
okay.
them.
You won't tell them. Or as I'm calling this one, Refrand.
We left our cowboy boots off.
Absolutely. It just broke my heart.
Swiping right.
Exactly, swiping right.
95% of the time of our audience aren't necessarily looking to buy.
Oh my God, it's been 2 years. Why is this still there?
If you work in marketing, then you may at some point have been involved in a brand refresh or rebrand project. But how did you find the process? And was the project a success? And what advice do you wish you'd been given before you started? Well, today we'll be talking about all of that with our client, Katrina Hutchings-Nichols, Chief Marketing Officer at Sannam S4 Group. Welcome, Katrina.
Thank you.
Thank you for doing this. Really appreciate it. And what we'd like to do is just have a chat with you today about the whole project that we worked on. But I think before we dive into any of that, we thought it'd be good if you perhaps give us a little bit of history about you, because you call yourself the Mary Poppins of Marketing.
I do. Everybody needs their own brand, right?
Absolutely.
And I might be stealing a little bit from Disney.
We won't
That's
tell
okay.
them.
You won't tell them. So I mean, I've been in marketing since I could, walk. I grew up in a very creative household, and marketing was always on the cards for me. And what I found very early on in my career was that everybody wanted to be like everybody else, and it was very samey. And when people would say that they were being different, they weren't really. So I was at a speaking engagement a couple of years ago, 10 years ago, and somebody introduced me and they made a comment about me just being able to pull things out of my hat. And so I corrected them and said it was out of my bag.
Carpet bag.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then that's sort of how it became a thing. And I pride myself on being quite quirky and different, and giving people not always the news that they want to hear, with a bit of sugar on top, and sort of raw honesty in other moments. And so, I mean, that's kind of where I'm at. I've never settled on a specific vertical at all. I like to play around and try different things, from banking to crypto to education, and consulting. And I've done my own thing, and I've worked in-house. So I've sort of spanned the breadth of marketing over the last 20-something years.
Cool. Well, I mean, as a brand agency, we kind of first met you a few years ago now.
8 years ago, yeah.
But it wasn't until you kind of joined Sannam S4 Group that we first started to work together. So you joined Sannam S4 Group, was it July?
2.5 years ago, yeah.
2021. So...
Yeah. Well, firstly, thank you to you guys to helping me and coming in on the project. I think, when it sort of came about and we really settled that we needed to rebrand, refresh what we did, I knew that I needed a creative partner that was going to get me and get sort of where we're going, but also understood where our market and our industry, to sort of pay homage to that too. So Sannam S4 Group is several businesses put together in one. And one side of our business, our seamless side, is focused on assisting nonprofit organizations and corporate in expanding internationally, exploring the opportunities that are available to them in the UK, the US, and Australia, and expanding into Asia and beyond. Acumen, the other side of our business, is very, very similar, except we completely focus on education, which can be a tricky sector to work in. And so I wanted to make sure that when we were trying to find a partner, that whilst they would already understand, and most agencies would understand the corporate side of things, that you guys would also understand the education bit of it. So Sannam S4 has been around for 15 years. It was started by our fantastic founder, Adrian Mutton, and co-founder, Kapil Dua. They had a vision to help people grow globally, ambitious companies and individuals. So it's really exciting for me to come into this business 2.5 years ago and help them rejuvenate and renew the thing that they had created.
And you would have seen a big change, obviously, from starting 2.5 years ago and then going through this process of just not just the rebrand, but the transformation of the organization as well. So which is sort of good to sort of see.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It has changed greatly, both in the way that we do things, the way that we talk about ourselves, and the way that we look. And I think this project came about. It's probably important to talk about how this project happened. Was when Adrian first met me in February of 21, I think. He and I had a discussion about their web presence and what the business looked like externally. And he asked me a question, which was, when you read our website, what do you think we do? And I
you gave me the honest answer.
Yeah, exactly.
Was it too honest?
It was one of those very honest answers. Absolutely.
Medicine.
Absolutely. And I mean, I gave him the answer he didn't necessarily want, I'm sure. But we saw it as an opportunity, and that's how I pitched it. Was this is your moment to, the pandemic was ending. This is your moment to really take a hard look at who you are as a business. And so what we did is we rebranded Sannam S4 as Group. Bringing in our two divisions, Acumen and Seamless, and then really, really, really focusing in on each one of their individual brands, their tone of voice, but also keeping in elements for each brand to the group. So when someone would look at our logo, there's a ribbon in everything that sort of ties everything together. And as I say, what it has done for us, at least digitally, has meant that we can truly see who our customers are, who's looking at us, who's interested in the things that we have to say. And as a marketeer, that is gold dust for me. And it allows me to do my job significantly better.
And as I say, it's quite interesting because sometimes when we embark on these projects, we don't know necessarily, we ask the question, why the rebrand or refresh to some degree. And it's interesting that you had that conversation with Adrian and you sort of made him realize that there needs to be a bit more of a strategic plan to bring that all together. Where normally, sometimes you normally think that that's something that the C-suite have made a decision on, therefore they act upon it. But the fact that you made him sort of realize that was the case, and obviously then...
Yeah, I think the idea was probably floating in his head at some point. But it's always good to have an outsider's view on it. And as I say, I don't always tell people the things that they like to hear, but I
sometimes
think
you have to pick your moment, don't you?
Exactly that, right? If he was having a really bad day, I probably wouldn't have said that. But and I think for us, it was, there's a lot of legacy stuff. There's a lot of legacy employees, and that journey. We both agreed in the beginning, this is going to be a long journey. It's not going to be a lights off, lights on. This is the new brand. This will take some time.
Because
that's
you
what we've been
guys,
doing.
You're in like global, aren't you? Like how many folks you got? 200?
So actually we're close to 400 now.
Wow.
Which when you guys came into us, we were about 280, 250. So we've expanded quite a lot. Really grown in our Southeast Asia markets. So we've got, we opened a headquarters in Vietnam, Malaysia. Right as I joined, we just opened in Australia. And it's honestly, we've gone from strength to strength over the last couple of years, and we've got a lot of new people as well, and being able to get them on board and be brand advocates for Acumen and Seamless. And of course, in the background, Sannam S4 Group, it's been
I think that for me is when you joined at a really exciting time for the business, and that was a massive opportunity to create something. So, and I think the reason that this is so good that we're doing this now, this podcast or this chat really, is the fact that some time has elapsed since it was launched. And so we kind of get to look back a little bit. Whereas normally, often these sort of projects, identity projects, get sort of judged like a diving competition where you kind of look at the splash and everyone says, hey, look, you've got a new logo or whatever, right? But we're actually now looking at sort of the ripples and the things over time that have changed within the business, and, things that, that you have a bit of a perspective on it, which I think is partly what really made us go, we need to chat to you now.
And I think, this type of content, but from other marketeers, if they're embarking on this sort of journey, from your experience, the things that you've learned, the things that you would change, managing people, stakeholders, things that you would give advice to. If you were watching this, what would you sort of tell yourself, and especially being sort of, I say, truly international, and then also that growth and how, obviously this is only one part of the rebrand, was only one part of it, but there was many other facets that you had to sort of manage and help, I suppose, orchestrate to get to that point. And also, what does success look like? What should success look like for someone who's looking at doing this, and sort of being able to share that with people is actually sort of quite interesting. So,
well, maybe should we sort of go deep?
Yeah,
let's go deep. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So obviously you came into this business and there was a mood for change.
Yes.
And obviously you then had to manage that brief, write a brief, and get us involved. Yeah. So how did that work for you? And how many stakeholders were there in the project?
With great difficulty and challenge, but I think that you're right. There was definitely a mood for change, and how much change I don't think was fully realized until they brought me in. And I'm quite radical when it comes to some things. So, I really wanted to make sure that I didn't, we didn't trash it, because Sannam S4 as its own entity was so loved and is so loved and well known that we couldn't just get rid of it. That would have been a terrible thing for us, and I think probably ultimately would have been on my behalf a bit of a rebrand failure.
Yes, because we actually kind of looked at that at one point in terms of names, and whether a project like this where you go to a group structure, whether that name changes. But that was decided early on to keep that.
Yeah. Well, the equity was in that brand, wasn't it? So that's obviously to make sure that tactic wasn't sort of used and deploy a different strategy. And
that's why we made the choice to, in all of our logos at the moment, and maybe it will change going forward, but just to keep hold of the equity that we had from Sannam. All of our logos have the little bit at the bottom, part of Sannam S4 Group, just to keep that in there for now. And as I say, it's a long-term project. For us, I think, with Seamless, with Acumen, there was a lot of, in the industry, what is this? Why did you change your name? And managing, as you say, managing those stakeholders, not just internally, but externally, our clients, that was probably my biggest challenge, but also something I'm extremely proud of now, looking back on it and seeing our clients, our employees really, really speaking about Acumen first, speaking about Seamless first, rather than we're Sannam, maybe Seamless. And in the beginning, it was a bit crazy trying to figure out which brand to use and how we spoke about ourselves. But I think now, as you say, coming into this conversation and looking at 2 years on, it's great. It looks great externally. It feels good internally. And I think we've set ourselves up for a really good success story.
Yeah, no, it's good. I mean, what's interesting is actually I suppose, managing the expectations of your clients with a rebrand. Yes. Was that something at the time that you gave some consideration to, and obviously then had a bit of a launch or a soft launch maybe, but the actual feedback, or not feedback, maybe sort of the reaction from the market, was that something that you expected, or it was actually there was more of more work to be done there, and obviously doing a bit of a launch, and almost having to consideration that you have to go a bit harder and a bit longer to make sure that message resonates or you get through, because obviously people don't like change.
Yes, exactly that.
And so
yeah, that's a great point there. And people don't necessarily like change internally or externally, and they get they make assumptions, and you know, it's not always perfect. I am not the biggest fan of opening the door super wide for opinions on rebrand, or as I'm calling this one, Refrand, because it's sort of in the middle of refresh and rebrand. You can coin that one.
You got to coin that one, yeah.
But as I say, I think sometimes when you open the door to too many people, there's a lot of opinions, and it means that a project that probably should take 8 months takes 18. And, I think as a marketeer, the one driving a project like this, I had to really have a lot of backbone and push, and but also accept that at some point maybe we needed to change messaging slightly later on, and have the wherewithal to evolving it slightly after launch. So we did an internal launch to our staff.
Yeah.
Then we did a sort of I think it might have been 48 hours before we went external into the world. We let our clients know, and some of our friendly prospects and that sort of thing. And then we went live. And as I say, that there are always going to be people that question it or don't like it, or
opinions.
Exactly.
Unfortunately, everyone's got one.
Exactly it. Everyone has an opinion. And in marketing, everyone has an opinion. My sassy LinkedIn comments are always that. It's easy to comment on something and not fully understand the amount of work and thought and process that went into it. When we were working on it, remember we looked at colors to make sure that nowhere globally a specific color would be offensive, and what that meant, and
culturally,
and the words that we used to rename our education business acumen and seamless. There was a significant amount of work that our team together did, that I don't think anyone, unless they were in it, would really truly appreciate how much consideration we had.
There. I think you're right, because the stakeholders that we met, and that we when we interviewed folks and we had some discovery sessions, and the folks were super passionate about the business. But then there's other folks that probably we didn't meet that had opinions that you had to then kind of like filter and manage, and everybody has a different opinion of what even a brand is. We say a brand is an individual emotional experience, but not everyone has that same opinion.
No.
And so that you've got to kind of align everybody. I think the way that we see our job is to help marketeers align folks, teach them the way that you want to do it. Because there's a myriad of different ways that you could do this, but you've all got to come along at the same journey at the same time. And that's what hopefully what a successful project does, and that's credit to you to be able to do that and keep people in line and crack the whip when you need to, right?
I get out the umbrella, the
umbrella.
And it's and not everybody will come along at the same time. There will be people always that still just don't get it. They don't understand. Or the finance guy that says, oh, we're spending so much money, why do we need this, or whatever. There's always going to be that. But, as I say, I think from a marketeer's perspective, it's, once it's agreed that this is a project that we're doing and there's buy-in from your board or senior leadership, I think you just kind of have to stick it out because, as I say, it's 2 years down the line now, and I'm really maybe only just seeing full buy-in.
I think that's a really interesting point, because I think anyone who's embarking on this type of project, it is a long-term thing. And also, as you sort of said, you still need that backing from the C-suite or someone. You need an advocate within your team or at higher level to actually support you to go through it, because you come up against challenge after challenge because you're trying to sort of make change culturally in the business, as visually as well. And you need support from that sort of senior team. And even sometimes senior team will be starting to doubt, I say, because it takes longer than expected.
Mm.
And the fact that, and then it actually then showing the value of what it's worth. And, that's a very difficult thing to put on a project like this. And after 2 years on, you're just starting to see that buy-in now.
Yeah.
And also you're probably just sort of starting to see that cultural change maybe in the business because you've had that clarity. And I think,
I came in, as I say, I came into a business that was ripe for change on every level of the organization. And so I think a lot of people viewed me when I came in as this sort of whirlwind person that was doing this big thing and then this other thing. And then we were working on employer brand. And it was a lot. It was a lot for anyone to sort of take on, but also a lot for an organization to manage. I had to pick my battles and the hills that I would die on. And I'm very, very glad that I did. I think I think they have been extremely successful. And, for me, I'm not ever the kind of person that takes credit for anything. If I didn't have champions like Adrian, sort of bet on the racehorse and guys like you to help me get there and get that buy-in and equip me with what I needed, I don't necessarily believe that it would have been successful. But
you mentioned budget.
You
mentioned that dreaded word.
But I suppose there's two sides, isn't it? There's the reality of the budget that's set for a project like this, and obviously there's a budget which is obviously set maybe by finance, possibly, or a budget that's set by marketing. Then obviously there's the reality of, as you say, it can be an 8-month project or 18-month project, and therefore how do you manage that as an expectation? But also I think that it's 18 months on, and also how that's actually maybe added value to the business from the fact that you've done that exercise. And if you hadn't done that before, or if it hadn't gone as well, the detriment to the business that could have happened. Obviously, you being on the other side of that, but obviously you fought tooth and nail to make sure it was success. But there'd be people who'd be listening or watching thinking, how do I get to that same point? And how do I manage the budget? And how do I even create a budget? How do you budget for something like this? Because
so I think that's budget is that scary word, the big flashing red lights in the background kind of thing. I think when a company chooses to bring in a senior marketeer like myself, that's an investment in itself, right? I don't come cheap, but it's having that expertise and that knowledge, and having someone that has done, this is my 10th rebrand, refresh, whatever we're calling it, in my career, and knowing sort of what's an acceptable budget, or are we going too low? One of the first things I do in any business that I come into, and actually some of my colleagues in marketing think it's pretty crazy, but I become very close to finance. It's very smart. I'm lucky that I work with a phenomenal finance team, and I know that they will be watching this and grinning ear to ear. But I do, and they are definitely partners, and they understand that again, I was an investment, but also the team and the project, and because I was able to present back, this is what we're doing, this is why we're doing it, this is the value that's added. We have to understand that maybe there won't be a dollars and cents at the end of this, that it will be a snowball effect over a couple of years. This is a long-term activity. And then they help me champion it too. So, I think for other marketeers looking at, oh my God, how do I get buy-in? What do I do about budget? One, it's finding the right partner, and getting that transparency, because there's a lot of cowboys out there. We
left our cowboy boots off.
Absolutely. Maybe just the chaps, but
circle the wagons.
But having the right partner where you can talk honestly and say, listen, I don't have a hell of a lot of budget, or I don't even know where to start.
I mean, that's a good point. I mean, did you start with an Excel spreadsheet and say, okay, well, we know we're going to have to do this. We need, somebody to do this. We need a new website. There's certain things that that are going to happen if you do a change as big as the one that you did.
Yeah.
So did you actually start and go through it line by line?
No. So, I mean, again, this is my 10th one. So I know in my head what's a good number. And if you had come back to me and had doubled the price, I would have been like, this is not going to work. But I think, if you're just starting out and you don't necessarily know that, honestly, it's always just easiest to go to 3 or 4 companies and not the big guys always. I think it's good to have them as a benchmark, the top 4.
Yeah.
It's good to do a benchmark, but depending on the size of your company, they're not going to really get involved anyway. But, it's a case of really kind of balance. For me, it's a case of balancing what our revenue is, looking at what we're currently bringing in, and then seeing what makes sense. If we were a £1 billion business, then which I hope we will be at some point.
Well, if we've done our job right,
exactly. Should have asked for more.
Should we do this in a couple more years' time and see where we get to?
But if we were a £1 billion business, I would expect to have spent significantly more because again, we have a lot more clients and we need a lot more pizzazz. But I think where we ended up made sense. It was modest. We used a modest budget. And as I say, it's an ongoing adventure.
Well, maybe we should touch on now the new term that you've coined to describe.
Refrand.
Because we talk to clients who don't exactly know what they want, and often what happens is you start a project thinking it's one way, and it morphs into something else. So sort of. We talk about brand refreshes.
You laugh.
Being like, if you're going to sort of, it's almost like you're changing certain things. It's almost like a new coat of paint on a property, as opposed to, a rebrand completely, where
new values.
You've actually raised the building to the ground and you're starting from the ground up. So, it's more nuanced than that, but you've coined something in the middle, which often happens. It's sort of like,
Well, you say raised to the ground. So, I mean, it's kind of like that in some ways, and as I say, we sit right in the middle. So there's a beautiful new coat of paint. We took a brand that was already there. We made it multiples, and we refreshed Sannam S4 as a brand and then created 2 new ones. So those were rebrands or brand creation. Our values, the deep down values, they didn't change.
No, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, they didn't change. Yeah.
What we were talking about in those 2 businesses does change. And really sort of the attitude of both of them are slightly different. But then when we look maybe digitally, one of the comments that, the more colorful comments that I gave to Adrian was that we should just burn our website down to the ground. When I came into it, it worked for what it needed to. But as a marketeer, that's my main tool of communicating externally, and it just didn't work.
Yeah.
So there was some of that, some of the setting fire to things, and the getting rid of certain color palettes that were frustrating for me.
Yeah.
Because in certain ways, we kind of kept some of the colours from the original Sannam S4 logo as part of that heritage.
Part of it.
Looking at where you guys had come from and not wanting to throw everything out, so we kept that, and then we introduced.
But you evolved it.
That's right.
Yeah. So we went from that neon orange to a more calmer tangerine. And then the rebrand side of things, where we creating the 2 new logos, that was a really exciting thing to do.
Because I remember, and I had to sort of go back a little bit and review sort of emails and bits and pieces and go through, because we started off looking at maybe like an icon that would that represent, and be able to be used across all of the brands. Yeah. And that's almost like sort of a branded house approach. But I think what's ended up, you've kind of more like got a house of brands. So so that's kind of, and that's the way that the project sort of morph. We started one way, and then with new information, you have to change tack.
But I'm never black and white, guys. We did do that. We did the house of brands, but also keeping in. If we look at Seamless, has a lovely ribbon underneath it. acumen in the A has a ribbon in it. And when we rebranded or created the new logo for Sannam, you guys made it this beautiful ribbon that has the colors of both acumen, seamless, and the legacy Sannam S4 brand. So it's this great thing where we talk about third elements and that sort of thing, where it's just this beautiful piece that ties everything together and goes through all of our DNA. I think it's a subtle approach, but it's worked very well.
Yeah. I think it's interesting is also when you, obviously with the rebrand, you mentioned about values and the position of the brand. When you relaunch, was that an opportunity to remind people, and clients and internal, external, of those values again? Yeah,
absolutely, it was. And we did a lot of that, and not even just externally, but internally too. My thing was always, and something I spoke a lot about internally, was that external, they'll get it. At some point, they'll come on board, because we're talking about ourselves. Twitter just rebranded to X. People will get on board. They're going to complain, but they'll get on board.
Yeah.
Internally is where we really had to focus. And it was really, really getting brand advocates to not call ourselves Sannam S4 in meetings, calling ourselves Seamless or Acumen, leading with that. And so it was a great opportunity to get people together, to spend time with them, to really show them what this new approach looks like, and reminding them of that, of who we are. We created, in this project, we created a employer brand as well. And you guys helped me with that. And our sort of slogan, rather than doing a slogan for Sannam S4 or for Acumen or Seamless, we created the internal brand slogan, our employee brand slogan, which was, we're one team with one mission, playing to win. And even though we're multiple brands, even though some people have Acumen in their title, some people have Seamless, I happen to have Group, we're all just the same group of people. We all have the same goal to help the business grow and to help our partners succeed in their aspirations. And that has been the game changer for us, is really, really getting them in love with our brand again.
That's a really good point, because I think, for people to understand that, they think the hard work maybe is always focused on the client, because obviously that's where the revenue comes from. But really importantly, that we always sort of say a brand is an inward-outward process. But if you don't get the team involved, and what you were also doing was, as you sort of said, that nuance of actually making sure they present themselves as that organization, but at the same time, they're part of the group. And I think having that common goal and reminding people that common goal makes them realize, obviously, they are working towards it, but they can focus on their key areas. But I think that's maybe, I think that people are sort of, it's an oversight that people don't realize. Or
they do, and I've been in other companies and done other rebrands, refreshes, where we've just focused on the clients. And, fine, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
And sometimes it depends on, an FMCG. I get it.
Yeah.
That's where they're going to need to focus. But internally is where you win the hearts and minds. And no client is going to buy it if internally they don't buy it. They're just not. And so you, as a marketeer, depending on, how your company is structured, but working with comms team and really sort of building that story, that brand story, and creating very clear messaging as to why you're doing this thing, what the purpose was, what the goals are. Being able to communicate that back to the clients when you're having conversations, and then they ask inevitable questions, is extremely important.
Yeah. But I think you make the point about that clarity of actually, showing them what in terms of what is good and what is sort of the outcome is sometimes, and what the purpose of organization is. And I think that's not easier said than done. I think.
Yes.
I think easier said than done, because if you, as you say, it gets very confusing. There's lots of stakeholders, so just try and come through that with some clarity, or to remind people what those purpose is sort of something, again, that marketeers maybe just have to sort of do a bit of due diligence themselves.
And it's constant reminding.
Yeah.
One email doesn't work. I can tell you that a year after we did this project, and we had relaunched, there were comments of, why did you do this and whatever, with our clients. And it broke my heart. And I thought, oh God, did I not communicate enough? Did I not give enough? And I think really nobody's going to read the first email. Nobody's going to read the 10th email. It's just continuous engagement and showing those values, not just talking about them.
It's interesting because there's a parallel again with what we do on sort of the creative side and the identity side. When you're talking about, you've got to remain consistent. When we create identities and we talk about brand codes and kind of not everyone kind of gets that.
No, they don't.
But the idea of what that is, and how important they are, that because we've spoken to clients that they don't know what they have or don't know what they haven't got. Because you can say a logo is a brand code, but that's only one part of it. You've got color, and you've also got, as we developed for you guys, the idea of this ribbon sort of motif that could weave its, and it could have a slight life that wasn't as rigid as rubber stamped everywhere. Yeah. But it was something that, you saw that ribbon motif on and you must have done loads of PowerPoint presentations or presentations, into Excel, yeah. Right? So it's sort of reminding folks again and again of that vision, because the way that we operate as humans, we go on pattern recognition. Right? It's we do that system one brain, right?
I think that's probably, if I'm honest, other than the stakeholder management of it, that's the second hardest thing of a project like this is, what do you do with all the old stuff? How do you get everyone to use the new font and to make sure that the logo is in the right place and all of that sort of stuff? And it can't be underestimated, the amount of over communication for stuff like that. My team and I were sort of a little bit militant.
Are we talking brand police?
A bit, maybe. Yes,
brand police is fine.
Although I still find things sometimes, and I'm like, oh my God, it's been 2 years. Why is this still there?
That's right.
I get really frustrated when I see it. But what we did is we use Google and the Google Suite, and it was a case of sort of just going into all the files and collecting everything and stealing it away and going, you can't use that. And,
I've got this vision of you creeping into files in the dead of night in some sort of like a burglar or cat burglar and sort of stealing folks, and they're like, where did my old logo go? It's like,
yeah. And it's, it's really, that's a tough one to get through. But I think once you get through that hurdle, some companies, it's just sort of like, lights on, lights off. Let's just delete everything.
Yeah.
And what I didn't want to do specifically with this project is I didn't want to make anyone feel like Sannam S4 was gone.
Yeah.
And these new brands were there. So we did a very soft approach.
Yeah.
And I think, with asset management and sort of brand police stuff, it's important for a marketeer to own the fact that it may need to evolve. Yeah. You can go out there and say, these are the 5 colors, and we're not using any gradients, and we're only going to use the logo in full color. It'll never be in white, whatever your rules are. But it's up to the people that are managing the brand to allow it to evolve as it needs to.
Yeah. That's a good point. I think the fact that when you've put those rules in place and you're trying to be consistent with the brand, when you've lived with it for a bit of time, it's when you create when you create a set of guidelines. The guidelines are there as principles, but you've not explored every possibility, and so you should revisit that. And again, as you sort of said, it may not necessarily work in practical sense. In theory, we think it's going to work, but when you get out in the real world and you apply it, sometimes you think it's just not quite working. And as you say, then you don't be afraid to change it. Don't be changed. But as you say, in the right hand, so it doesn't change completely. And
exactly.
You lose all that, lose all the work that you've done beforehand.
Yeah. Because marketeers like shiny new things, don't they? That's the trouble.
We do like shiny things.
Once you've seen something, for a long time, you've seen the color or whatever, you kind of, we've come across this with clients that kind of say, can we just not use our corporate color or our brand color anymore? I'm fed up with blue or green or whatever. Can we just try a different color? And they don't,
I suppose we're working with clients at the moment who are necessarily using their own set of guidelines. because it does for whatever reason. But I think, as you say, I think because there is an element of creativity and marketeers, they want to exercise that that creativity and they go off brand. But you have
to be careful about that.
Your job is to manage the brand.
But exactly. It's managing it, and it's also viewing it. It's not kind of what we want or see or perceive it. It's what the folks outside and how they see it. And like you said, if you send an email, folks aren't going to even respond to the first one. No. It's the same. You've got to keep doing it consistently, and then over time it will sink in. I mean, it's like that. It's like the 95-5 rule.
Yes.
Have you heard of the 95-5 rule?
Go ahead.
So it's something that's come via the Ehrenberg Bass Institute in Australia. We've been sort of
and
LinkedIn, the LinkedIn Business Institute have also picked up on it. Basically, what it says is that, and it started with the business to business sort of side of things more so than consumer. Yeah, it does work for everything.
What it did, it challenged marketing funnels in some respects.
Okay,
because what they're saying, a true marketing funnel has come from a sales funnel. The sales funnel was the first aspect where you take customer from from acquisition to buy, and then marketing have adopted that. And so what was through the research is finding that really it's actually it's a bit more simple in that respect to begin with, because what you find is that in any market, any sector, that you'll have a percentage of customers who are in market, and you'll have another percentage of customers who are out of market. They're not looking to buy or purchase.
Yeah.
And that's where they're sort of saying is that 95% of the time of our audience aren't necessarily looking to buy.
Yeah.
And 5% are. So what you need to do is look at how you're building that brand, and almost again being consistent with presenting the idea that you're there. So you're trying to build up that short-term memory, but then you have the sales activation marketing. It might be offered based, it might be incentive based to those 5% when they are in market. So you need to have that balance to make sure that you're, as I sort of said, you go back to what you said before about your values and reminding people, you're sort of nurturing and building those sort of short-term memory structures and long-term memory structures. But you've got to know what your proposition is to begin with to make sure they're remembered. So the 95 rule is just sort of saying that when you're looking at your strategy is actually making sure part of that, or your comms plan is sort of work to those two different audiences, as opposed to, because people don't say, I'm in the middle of the funnel at the moment. I'm considering.
Exactly.
And I've got to purchase.
We're real people. We never say I'm in consideration phase now. I'm like, I might move into sort of research or whatever. I'm
people just go about their job about, and it's the right time, right place. So it's the idea of that priming, but at the same time using that sort of short term activation. So that's where it sort of comes from.
And that's sort of that. It's that memory recollection of doing things. It's when brands, and I'll be honest, I'm not the biggest fan. I'm sure my marketing colleagues would slap me for this. I'm not the biggest fan of using memes in marketing, mainly because I work in a corporate environment and that's not always appropriate. But it is memorable. It is absolutely memorable.
Yeah.
And, when I look at some of the projects that we've done is, playing with the messaging and playing with how we get people to read an email or whatever, and doing maybe something a little quirkier.
Yeah.
We do a newsletter, our Fortnightly 5, and I like a bit of alliteration. And my head of comms, she uses sometimes a subject line that's your favorite F word, and it's fantastic, actually. And we always have significantly more whenever we play with things a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think we forget sometimes as marketeers or executive leadership, we forget that everyone is just another person communicating to another person. Maybe they're the CEO, maybe they're the CFO. Or they're still just a normal person that has KPIs to meet and a job to do and buys things like everyone else buys things.
Human,
So
and to sort of tap into that being human. But as you say, when you're in corporate, finding that sort of balance for humor is
it's tricky.
But I think it
is very tricky, especially a global business and not offending.
So I would call that creativity.
Good.
Because I think that's the idea of being creative in that framework. Because obviously that's what it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
And as it's proven, as with humans, a bit of humor, making people laugh, all those things get you remembered, and that's how it works. But not everyone can always, deploy that, within their corporate world.
It's the making people laugh, but I think it's also speaking to their heart sometimes. At the moment, we're running a great campaign for our Acumen team on International Education Week, and which I'm sure will be passed by the time this video comes out. But we're doing a campaign on that, and we're asking our leadership team, what does it mean to you? What does international education mean to you? And what does it mean to the success of the UK, the US, Australia, whatever? And their responses have been so heartfelt. And it has been so fantastic to see the responses on LinkedIn and having people respond emotionally rather than just, thumbs up and everything's swell.
But I think when you tap into emotion, when people show you real emotion, and when a brand can demonstrate that, that's when people remember more as well, because that's how we are as humans. It's like the Disney thing, right? Yeah, they always kill off the mum at the beginning, right? It's all those films, right? And you go on a roller coaster. But when you, when you introduce that emotion, more people remember. It's a story.
Absolutely.
I just want one of the things that you mentioned, and I think for marketeers and anyone else that you have had experiences, you made a very good point. And I think marketeers have to try and get closer to finance. And you sort of made a point of getting to closer finance, but at the same time, you mentioned about it in a particular meeting that you sort of said that this particular project will add value, but it won't be necessarily pounds and pence. If you were sort of trying to pass some knowledge onto obviously a marketeer, so the idea is to get closer with finance, and maybe to a point where you explain where this particular project will add value, but not necessarily in pound and pence, possibly. Yeah. But how would you be able to sort of explain the sort of the value that it added to the business to help them for their, when they're speaking to their CEO or their owner of the business, in terms of actually how this has an impact?
It's a tough question.
So I know it is a tough question.
It is a tough question.
Because
it corners marketeers when you ask questions like that. It corners us. Because so much of what we do is a little woolly.
Yes.
Right?
No, exactly.
It just is.
Nothing's
it's a
perfect.
Little bit woolly. It's never perfect. You're right.
And I think that's the point. See, the thing is, it doesn't have to be perfect. And I've heard that from other marketing professors. And I think marketing is a little bit, it's a bit this and a bit that. And I think, and that's because you're dealing with humans. You don't. There is a science behind it, but it's not exact. Yeah. And I think there's nothing to be afraid of that. And when you're talking to finance, unfortunately, things are black and white.
Yeah, exactly that. And spreadsheets.
Yeah.
Black and white and spreadsheets. Yeah. But I think, one of the ways that I explained it was, sort of asking an open-ended question of how many prospects have we gone out to in the last year and a half, 2 years, who just didn't buy from us, that we couldn't carry on a conversation, that just aren't engaged now. What a great opportunity this is now for us, having rebranded, having a new story to tell, new initiatives, new products, all of the things that come with this kind of rebrand or refresh. Being able to re-engage the market and say, maybe you weren't ready for us then, but now let's re-engage. And I think that has been incredibly helpful, because we have definitely done that.
Yeah.
But also, just looking at, for my project in particular, being able to say that, we've quadrupled the amount of people visiting our website and engaging with us on social media in 2 years is incredible. And maybe our sales cycles are long. Maybe it takes a while for someone to come on board. Again, we're B2B, so it's never going to really be, we're not selling software or widgets. But being able to say that we have 4 times more people looking at us and reading what we're doing and forwarding our stuff, resharing, that has a value in itself, in every person.
I think that's good to hear, because I think that, and we know that from our perspective, the world of branding, that's where we live, and we think that's all that is contributed to the fact that obviously, but I think it becomes a catalyst though, doesn't it? Because I think it gives the organisation confidence to go to market and say that and make that growth. And I think I remember saying that sometimes the actual value of a business isn't necessarily based on the value of its current customers. It's actually the value of the size of the market that they
Absolutely
haven't penetrated yet. And as you made that point, so, you know, the idea is actually our growth can be X if we can actually go to market and convert some of those in. And obviously knowing that, you know, 4 times as many people are now looking at your site, it obviously, and you've grown from 280 people to 400, proves that it sort of does work.
It definitely does. And I think you said something just a moment ago about the confidence to go back out to market. And one of the things when I surveyed, and I did do some surveying before I sort of embarked on this journey of, you know, what would people like to see and what were the problems with the current look and feel and, you know, sort of the visual aspects of stuff. And resoundingly, it was, I just don't like the way this looks. This doesn't make me feel confident. My sales team didn't feel confident in PowerPoint presentations and that sort of stuff, more than just the snazzy side of it. But, you know, after 15 years, a brand gets needs some zhuzh.
It does.
It needs some love. Absolutely, yeah. So being able to now go back out to market and have the pretty all singing, dancing things. And again, it's still evolving. There's loads of things that we just haven't been able to do because we've been so run off our feet busy with all the other amazing projects that we're doing. But being able to give them that confidence and go into meetings knowing that their brand is fresh and young but also revered in the markets that we work in, I think has been incredibly helpful for them.
Yeah. What I wanted just to touch back on is this an idea of the process, obviously, because when we worked together on the visual identity side, obviously we took you through our process, which, you know, we did sort of our sort of diagnostics, you know, in terms of we chatted to folks, we did sort of discovery sessions, and then we did the timelines and all the, you know, it came first stage visuals, that sort of stuff. Did you have a process in terms of the whole thing that you were kind of working to? Obviously, you said this is not your first barbecue, right? So, but I wondered whether you had a sort of a tick list of stuff that you were going through mentally and say, well, we're doing this now. We're in this phase, you know, we're in the strategy phase now, and then we're going to move through to the who's doing what phase, and then it's the how do we kind of get an idea of how to measure it phase, and then we're in the making it come alive, the experience phase, and then there's actually sort of the telling folks about it. You know, did you have a sort of a mental? Absolutely not. I just wing it. I just wing it. It's just wing it. Okay, no, genuinely though. Yes, but I also and maybe, you know, I'm sure others could criticize me on that, but I don't necessarily always share what phase we're in. So yes, I do, and I have a process that I work through and know where I need to be at any given time. But sometimes I think contradicting some of the things I've already said, oversharing, especially in marketing, can make life very difficult because people wonder, well, we're not at this stage yet, and what date are we going to get there? And sometimes you've got to manage expectations, exactly right? That. And it's like, how many versions of the logo do we show? Oh gosh, right? So many. Well, we've had this conversation of you show too many, right? You give people too much choice. It becomes difficult to make decisions. Yes. And I know my CEO is going to watch this. And knowing that, you know, I gave him 5 to view and we probably went through 50. Yeah. But that's he may be wondering what were those. But that's our job, right? Our job. Absolutely. Exactly. Our job is that, you know, you work with a professional, you know, agency to make those decisions for you and present. Yeah. But there's a challenge because, as you sort of say, everyone has an opinion. So our expertise is that visual identity and to present something we know will work in every circumstance. But you give choices because it feels like people can participate in that process. Yes. Limited choices. Exactly. Yeah. And I think, you know, for me, so I use the phrase a lot. My team would laugh at me when they see this, but I use the phrase a lot. I'm just not married to that. So, you know, we, like I said, I think we went through like 50 different iterations, and I didn't like some things and I wanted to change things. I wanted to merge other things. And then when we got to, I think it was 5 in the end,
I wasn't married to any of them. I did have a favorite that I really liked,
Yeah.
which happens to be the one we chose.
Well,
But
I'm intrigued now. Is there like some sort of dating scale that you go through for a brand?
Yeah.
It kind of like, so you just sort of, casually seeing somebody,
yes.
and then it maybe you go on
Absolutely.
a first date,
little Tinder side.
you're sort of picking out curtains, or you haven't got a mortgage or whatever, and then you're actually married, and then that's the final thing.
Yeah. I can actually remember when we presented, or when you had the 5, and I think you was going to meet Adrian at a hotel maybe to go present, and I'm not sure if you had that much time, but I remember you sort of saying you're going to present him and then go through, and then I think you maybe called us after and said, yeah, that's the one we're going with.
Yeah.
So I'm a big gut believer. I don't know, maybe it's the American South in me, a bit of a witch. I knew not any other word, just a witch. But I knew that was the one that he was going to like, and my gut said that was the one that we ultimately chose. But I think it's always important to give options, and maybe even sneak in one that's really awful that I really don't like, just to kind of steer in the direction.
But you see, that's dangerous.
We have done that guiltily, that we've put an idea in which we're
not 100% happy with.
No, but
and they go and choose that one.
Right? Why did we put it in though? I sort of said we should not put it in.
Well, there we go.
You have to make it a really ugly color.
Yeah, I know, but what happens if they choose it? And it's like, oh my God.
That's the thing. And invariably they choose the one that
one that you don't want.
So I think that we've learned not to put that in.
Yeah. We trust our gut more, I think.
I've done ones before where, we've done like really radical logo design.
Yeah.
And then kind of the same that they already have, just slightly different font, chunkier letters, whatever. And I get really frustrated sometimes when they choose something that's very similar. And I've kicked myself in the past of, I should have just gone with all the radical ones.
Yeah.
Like, why did I do that? Why did we just, budget for all of this stuff when I could have done that in Photoshop, which is such a typical marketer thing. But, I think it is important to bring people in at some point in the journey, in the process. And it definitely is dating. It was choosing an agency was the Tinder version, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And then I swiped right on you guys and we matched. and then we worked together. And, there have been moments in my career where I have worked with agencies or vendors and it just didn't work out. In the end, we got 3/4 of the way through and it just wasn't what we needed. And they weren't challenging us enough and or giving sort of the gravitas that I was looking for. So, being, again, sort of part of the value that comes with someone that does my job is knowing when to pull a trigger and knowing when to go, this just isn't, you're not going to get the value that you need, and having the backbone to do it.
Yeah. Because I'll say it's important that you get this, not you get this right, but it can go horribly wrong. Absolutely. And there's a lot at stake.
Yeah.
So there's a lot at stake.
And it's gutting when that happens.
Yeah.
I've had that happen fairly recently. And it's, oh gosh, I trusted you to do this thing and you didn't do this thing. And now I have to pivot and I have to go to plan C, D, E. And then having to manage internal stakeholders and go, okay, so I made a decision, didn't go well. I'm pivoting.
Yeah.
Trust me. And I think, at least in my current role, and in any of the roles that I've been in the last couple of years, but having a CEO, finance team, and other colleagues that trust me and go, okay, not great, Katrina, but I trust you, fix it.
Yeah.
And, I think some marketeers, colleagues of mine that I've had in the past, they just get so upset and they beat themselves up. We're creatives and we care very deeply. All of us care very deeply about the work we do. And, I think it's so important for people that are just coming up into roles like mine to just really know that, I mean, none of us have done it right all the time.
Yeah.
And we screw up a lot.
That's good to hear.
Yeah. How else do you learn if you don't ever make any mistakes, right?
You don't learn,
Yeah.
do you? So,
Which is why it's good to have relationships like ours, where I can just tell you, I think it's crap, and
talking about your stuff,
you know, exactly. But you know, and being able to have honest conversations and sort of break through that I'm the buyer and you're the supplier mentality.
Yeah, I think that it works best when you're sort of both working and pulling this. I mean, it sounds like cliche, but often it doesn't
I need you to make me look good, man.
Yeah, that's what I need. That's what we say. We have a saying that our job is to make our clients look good, to make their job easier. That is it. I mean, that's fundamentally because that's how it works.
Okay, so we're doing really well. I've got a couple more little questions to fire at you in terms of.
This is like quick fire round.
Well, I mean, maybe not that quick, because anyone knows me knows I can't say anything that quick, right? But I was going to say, is there a something that that you'd wish you'd have known about this project before you started, or something that you'd done differently? Now looking back and sort of, you know, was it something that would have made life a lot easier if you'd have known something at the beginning, or a piece of advice that someone said, or whatever? You know, if you could go back in time.
Yes. Yes.
Are you going to share that with them?
I am. Yes.
I know the answer.
Okay, what's that?
You should go choose a different agency.
Oh, no,
choose a different
never
agency.
choose that.
It's like an arrow to the
Absolutely
heart.
Absolutely not. No, I think, so when I came into the business, it was almost immediate that we started this project. Didn't have a lot of time to get my feet wet. And I think if I were to do it over, and again, you know, this was a snowball effect. We were rolling through a bunch of changes all at the same time, and it needed to happen when it did. But I think I probably would have wanted to give myself 3 to 6 months more time in the business.
Yes, good. Yeah.
To, you know, there were some people, again, I'm sure that they'll be watching, but there are some people that were very, very attached to the brand that we had as it stood initially. And, you know, as being brought in as an agent of change, I probably didn't endear myself to them very well. And I wish that I had more time to really understand the relationships of the individuals in the business with the brand. So that, and even some clients, actually, some longtime clients, and to be able to bring them in earlier on than when we probably did. I think that would have helped me get through a lot of some of my challenges, but also probably would have enriched some of the things that I'm kind of just now adapting now based on feedback I heard 2 years ago. So yeah,
that's a good point.
That's a very good point.
We've heard that before, you know,
absolutely.
And we've witnessed that where folks will come into a new role and they'll literally want to change everything from day one, and sometimes that's not the right approach because.
It doesn't make any friends.
It doesn't make any friends. But also, you're going to miss some stuff that may be really good that you need to keep. And you need to know what to change and what not to change. And you only get that with time. And that's the thing. If you don't have time, if you've got time pressure, someone saying, we need to go live at this point, then you don't have that time to sort of, you know,
you need to
diagnostic. Just live with the brand for a while. Just sort of chat to folks and see how
just exist.
Understand the culture of the people and stuff like that. It's so different. So
and I mean, I didn't have for this role specifically, I didn't have any time to even really spend with my colleagues. We were just coming out of the pandemic. Yeah. Most of my colleagues are in Asia. And so I wasn't traveling, and we couldn't really travel to India at the time. And so there's just things that, as I say, I'm incorporating now. And as new people come in to our business, you know, that's always a challenge for anyone coming in, wanting to change things, do things, bring in new vendors, new suppliers, that sort of thing, new teams. I think it's always just important to sort of take a step back for a minute. And I know that if and when I do another project similar to this, which, you know, I've got a lot of years behind me, so I'm sure there's a lot of years in front, that I would do that. I would ask for 6 months, you know, understanding that maybe some things aren't going to be as radical as they're hoping for.
Managing people.
I think we've chatted very briefly about how you measured the success of this project, you know, in terms of, you know, we're not looking at necessarily a massive uplift in terms of sales or profit, because
even though that has been the case.
Yeah, but did you have some key sort of benchmarks of this is what you'd ideally like to see in 2 years' time?
Yeah.
Is that if someone else looking at another marketer looking at how do I measure the success of a project like this?
So again, mine is always about the people, right? And yes, I am a ROI driven marketeer, absolutely. But this specific organization that I'm in now, it's a little bit softer. I'm not selling widgets. I'm not in fintech anymore. So for me, it was I wanted to end 2023 with all of our mid to more junior level employees as brand advocates on social media, putting posts out, tagging the right company, not just having Sannam S4 as their company name, but having Acumen or Seamless, and really getting that engagement. And we have. For me, it's been so great to see. And I've spent, I think now across this year, I've spent in total about 6 or 7 weeks now in India with my colleagues and doing sessions with our some of our Acumen team and doing LinkedIn sessions with our senior leadership team and explaining what the best methods of doing that sort of thing are, and seeing them engage. That's just the tick. That's the tick box, and they all have big networks of people in our client base. And as they do their thing, it just helps my thing.
Yeah.
So I suppose what you're saying is the measures of success really depend on the business that you're in and the sector that you're in, because they're going to change. You can't just have one kind of measure. Say, well, X, Y. You've got to. That's coming back to that diagnosis phase of knowing the business before you make changes to know what's going to be the really big change.
What's a good result?
What's a good result for that business? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, in previous companies that I've worked in, obviously outside this project, but I was working in fintech, and it's being able to say, okay, we're going to change our brand, and we're expecting that we have, a 125% increase in sales of this piece of software or product. And that's, very clear measurables. And again, you can do that sort of thing in your emails and lead gen activities. But when you're looking at B2B consulting and partnership and research and sort of the softer sides of what we do, it's just, you just can't measure it like that. You can, I guess, but it's hard to say. And one of the things, it's budget season for me right now. And one of the things I talk to our sales team and our commercial officer about is that, again, probably fairly controversial on brand for me, is that I don't believe that marketing is or should be targeted on the sale of anything, unless you're in growth. But actually, it's on the pipeline and the amount of opportunities that marketing has helped and put forward to the sales team and accounts team. So when I look at my ROI for this year, I look at the events that we've done. Education is such an events-driven business. In corporate consulting, it's being out there in the market, seeing different people, kind of thing, and being able to say, okay, guys, we spent however much money and we went to 18 events this year. How many times did you get to speak to this prospect? And how many times did you, are we carrying on conversations? And for me, that's how I really target it. And just being able to refresh the brand, put the 2 different brands in place, has been a massive catalyst for us engaging in more conversations. And then in the back end, helping with the opportunity and the ROI.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I mean, that's the job between sales and marketing, and that's where that sort of 95-5 rule comes into play, because you're increasing that 5% from 6% because you're engaging and you're helping sales.
That's right. We're building long-term memory structures. The best, someone said the best search engine is not Google. It's here. And if if our job is also to help you to plant Sannam S4 Group and Acumen and Seamless as those brands that folks remember when they need to engage. That's
I mean, expanding internationally in any whatever part of our business you're engaging in. That is not I'm gonna Google that.
No,
and and then tomorrow I'm going to open shop in Bangladesh. That is absolutely not the case.
Yeah.
So for us, it's as you say, it's just really sort of putting out content, inbound marketing driven, making sure it's memorable and not boring. My God, if I read another boring blog, I can't. And having a little bit of fun in things.
No, that was good. I enjoyed that, and it's really nice to hear the other side, the insight in terms of actually managing team, obviously getting close to finance, and also how it's actually helped the business. And
getting close to finance is the top tip. Sometimes those guys are scary. Again, I'm lucky to have some great guys.
Yeah.
But and gals, guys and gals. Let's be
diplomatic.
Yeah, diplomatic and diverse. But I think sometimes marketeers miss that step.
I think because they're focused on marketing. Yeah. And I think the realization marketing in its purest sense is to make money for the organization. That's what its primary aspect. So understanding how finance works and maybe getting a bit more budget to do something and explain to because I think sometimes marketers get a poor reception at the table, if they're at the table, in terms of actually that's all C-suite, because it's marketing, isn't it? But it's such,
absolutely that's very, very true about marketing getting kind of a bad rap in the C-suite. It's why hires like me are difficult to justify sometimes. I mean, I'm biased, and I always think that marketing should be on a board as the voice of your client, and in the boardroom, in the executive table. But a lot of people think that they know what marketing is. A lot of people think that it's just the logo, it's just our business card, it's just the event that we went into, and it's so much more than that. And for me, like I said, my biggest success, I think, in my career has been that understanding the finance piece.
Yeah.
I mean, I went to business school, and really, I went to the school of YouTube too, to understand sort of when they bring up the finance call and we talk about our numbers and understanding what the revenue is and what the difference between, where we are and where we're not. And, and that is really boring for a creative person.
Yeah.
But it has been the biggest thing, the best thing that I've ever done.
So understanding a balance sheet. To some degree.
Massively.
Yeah. I'd be interested to find out how many marketeers do and don't. Even mid-level marketeers.
Well, when you post this, you should poll it.
Yeah. It's a good question because for me, it's
because it can be scary. It can be
absolutely and boring. It's boring. Let's be honest, it's boring, right? It is.
All accountants are boring.
They are. They're boring, and especially for someone very creative and or not brought into the fold.
Yeah.
Or feels like they don't get me. I'm just the guy that makes brochures. I'm just the person they come to set up a stand at an event, and really being able to say, actually, I'm not sure about that. Or maybe we can increase revenue by doing this or targeting this market, this section of our audience versus that, because there's more margin there or whatever. But being able to have real, true conversations that are sounding smart in the boardroom is, as I say, it's a game changer for marketing. And I think more of us should get on board with that.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think because marketeers, or what marketing used to be, at the 4 Ps in terms of price, product, promotion, and placement.
Hate the 4 Ps.
But then marketeers used to do all of that. So sometimes you create revenue by looking at price and not actually doing anything to the market. But I think marketers, over the years and years, and it's become focused on communication and as a key point.
Well, that's the cross between, as a commercial department, right? It's a cross between sales and marketing, where, a lot of times sales want to be sales and marketing want to be marketing.
Yeah.
And the two should meet. And that's a serious problem.
Yeah.
That's a serious problem. And organizations that have that problem need to sort their shit out, to be honest with you. But, I say this all the time to my current colleagues, and I'm sure they probably get pissed off at me for it, but I'm not the brochure and leaflet department.
Yeah.
I'm here as an advisor. That's what they pay me for.
Yeah.
I advise on the best methods. I'm not married to any of it. If you want a flyer or a leaflet, I'll make you a flyer or a leaflet. But I think there are probably other better ways to do things.
Yes.
And we may still end up at the flyer or leaflet, but
yeah,
the advice is there, or it's a marrying of multiple things. Sometimes it's just about making other people happy and giving them what they think they need, and then giving them better.
A leaflet.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
Well, that's a good place to end it, I suppose, because we've had a bit of fun today, right?
No, I've enjoyed today. Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. No, it's always.
Thank you so much for having me.
Always nice talking to you.
Thanks ever so much for doing this, Katrina. I really appreciate it. And maybe we'll come back in another couple of years sometime and
we'll have multiple other brands in the group.
Exactly,
It'll be great. It'll be great.
Yeah, no,
Brilliant.
It's been really. I think also any marketer listening, also the little bits of nuggets that you've given someone, and I think also the fact that there's no perfect remedy. It's not. There's no.
There is no perfect remedy.
No, and just having a feel for
spoonful of sugar.
Spoonful of sugar.
But I'll end it here as I could not have done this without you guys and your team behind you, and my team, obviously. But I think the methods of success are always seeped in the partnerships that you have, and choosing the right people.
Yes.
The right vibes. And
swiping right.
Exactly, swiping right. And I think any marketeer that's looking at you guys and watching this session or any others that you guys are doing, I think if they're looking for a group of people that are willing to sort of go above and beyond the brief, I think it's you guys always. So thank you.
Thank you. A lot of thanks going around.